Welcome to Attainable Green. I'm Jess, and today I'm going to share with you the phals that I have with really interesting foliage. Most of them are going to be variegated or mottled leaf types, but there are some that just have really interesting foliage that I just have to share. When most people think of Phalaenopsis, they think of the ones in the grocery store, but I find that the species and some of the more unusual hybrids are even more fascinating. Not only do they have these beautiful flowers, they also have a stunning foliage, and they just are so interesting that that is really what draws me to keep on collecting Phalaenopsis. So I'm going to start with the most popular and probably most well-known of the mottled leaf phals, and that is going to be the Phalaenopsis schilleriana. Now this particular variety is called TKB Best, and it is known for its darker coloration and fuller flowers. Supposedly it also has a great scent, but mine currently does not have a scent. Schillerianas are probably the easiest of the mottled leaf varieties to find, and their foliage is so stunning. Some have more uniform patterning or barring on it, to the point where it looks kind of like tiger stripes. The pattern of the variegation may vary, and also the flowers themselves may have a little bit variability depending on which strain or variety that you may have. I've seen some that are almost white, it has kind of like pinkish tones, all the way up to these ones that are almost dark purple. So it really just depends on what is interesting to you and what you can find as to which schilleriana that interests you. Here in Southern California, there's a nursery called Norman's Orchids, and they definitely have several strains of Schilleriana, and I find it's really fascinating because he's collecting different ones from different areas in the Philippines, and it's kind of interesting to compare all the different ones because although they may look slightly similar, they also have differences. So either the flower and the patterns and even the growth habit can be a little bit different. So the next one is the Phalaenopsis STUARTIANA. The STUARTIANA tends to have a lighter patterning on the foliage, and the flowers are white with kind of these little speckled spots around the lip and sepal area. There are two forms of the STUARTIANA. There is the one that has white flowers, and there is the one with yellow flowers. The one with the yellow flowers is called the nobilis, and I currently have that one in bud. So when it blooms, I'll definitely share that one with you. As for the STUARTIANA, I have kind of a small seedling of it, so it'll probably be a few years before it becomes blooming size. Most of these plants I have are fairly young, so if they don't bloom, they're totally fine for me because I pretty much pick them out for the foliage. Now the next species is the SANDERIANA. Now this one tends to have similar foliage to the STUARTIANA, but the flowers are more similar to an AMABILIS or even the SCHILLERIANA. It tends to have a light pink flower that's fairly large and floriferous. I think the SANDERIANA is probably the harder of the species to find. It doesn't really come up for sale too much. The next plant is the Phalaenopsis PHILIPPINENSIS. Now this plant has white flowers, and the shape is really similar to the Schilleriana, but the lobes, or kind of the sides of the lip, tend to be yellow, and that is what distinguishes this one from the other types of white flowered Phalaenopsis. And the next one is the Phalaenopsis lindenii. Now this one is a mini Phalaenopsis, so this plant doesn't grow very big. I have a fairly young plant right now that's potted in bark, so it may be a while before this one blooms to show you them, but this plant is known for having this light veining or striping on the flowers themselves. Now the last of the mottled leaf phals is the Doritis PULCHERIMMA variety MARMOTA. Now I have this one as a seedling that was just recently deflowered, so even in the seedling form it still has a kind of mottled leaf look. The Doritis species tends to be a more upright growing plant, so while you see the Schilleriana and some of the other plants, they tend to be a little bit floppy and they tend to like to grow kind of sideways. The Doritis likes to grow upright. So this plant is great if you are specifically looking for a phal that doesn't like to topple over. The flowers on this plant are pretty variable. I've seen some that are almost white and others that are more pinkish or purplish toned. So it'll be interesting to see when this one matures and how it flowers, what the flowers will actually look like. So those are the mottled leaf phals that I have in my current collection. There is one more that I'm looking to get, and that is the celebensis. I have two hybrids made from some of these species, and I think they are pretty stunning. So the first one is the Phalaenopsis bronze maiden, and this is also known as the Phalaenopsis Schillman. So this is a cross between the Schilleriana and Manii. and I have the flowers right here behind me, and I think they look pretty cool. Most of the ones that I've seen, it takes after the manii parent with a star-shaped look to it, but I think this plant looks more similar to the SCHILLERIANA with more fuller petals and sepals. So it gives it more of a stronger presence, and I think I really like this look. It does have a little bit of that mottled leaf effect, but it looks more like a reverse. Mostly has this kind of silver gray overlay and then like little speckles of green underneath. The next hybrid is similar to the Bronze Maiden. It's made with Jiho's Pink Girl crossed with manii. So this one has more of a silver sheen on top of the entire leaf instead of the little speckles or freckles on it. So far that one hasn't bloomed yet, so it'll be interesting to see what that one will look like when it blooms. I don't have the full list of hybrids that have been made with these plants. I'm sure you can look it up and find some of them, and I've heard some people have found some of these mottled leaf types in their supermarkets and grocery stores. So I think they're slowly trickling in, and maybe we'll see some soon. So the next set of plants don't have mottled leaf variegation, but they still have these beautiful leaves nonetheless, and I want to share with you some of the ones that I have and what makes them so unique. So the first one is the Sedirea japonica, also known as the Phalaenopsis japonica. This species is known to be kind of collector's items in and of themselves, and some people collect a lot of these Sedirea japonica in all different varieties. These ones can have the standard size or a miniature size, and not only that, they also have this really cool striped variegation. I've recently discovered that they have a normal sized Sedirea japonica, but with the striped variegation or Shima variegation. So that one was really cool to find. I also have the Minmaru Shima, which is kind of the more compact version of the Sedirea japonica, but it has the striped variegation on the leaves as well. Each plant that has that variegation is expressed quite differently. So the plant overall can look completely different from the next one, even though they're both Shima varieties. The next plant is the Chia Yenlin Variegata. So this plant is really similar to the Sogo Vivian. It has harlequin style flowers, so it kind of has these spots in the center, and the outer area of the petals and sepals is a different color. I think this plant is really cool because the variegation is primarily on the edges of the leaves, which gives it kind of that marginal variegation. Now the next plant is the Phalaenopsis deliciosa, and this one is a silverleaf variety. Currently it's not doing the greatest, and it's still pretty young, so I'm hoping to keep this one alive, and hopefully we'll see these blooms. I think that the blooms are really pretty. They're kind of these small purple flowers, but what's really interesting is that the leaves of this plant have that silver sheen on it, but also as it gets larger and bigger, they kind of show these kind of ripples or ruffly effect along the edges of the leaf as well. Now, the last plant that I want to feature is the Phalaenopsis AMABILIS. Now, this plant is one of the parents of a lot of the white Phalaenopsis that you may see in the supermarket. This plant has a white cast on its leaves, kind of like a glaucous layer, and it kind of has like little freckles in between. So it doesn't necessarily have the mottled leaf pattern, similar enough that I find it really interesting. So the flowers of this plant definitely has the similar look to a standard Phal, but you can see that there is a little bit of variation in it, and I think I kind of like the open structure of this plant a lot more than I like the standard Phals. It just makes it a little bit more interesting. This plant is supposed to be really fragrant. It smells like jasmine, I think, but my current plant doesn't have a scent. So I probably have to look into it and see why that is. It might be a young plant, or maybe a specific variety needs to have that scent. So I hope you enjoyed this little tour into my Phalaenopsis, especially the ones with a little bit of interesting foliage. And I just wanted to share with you that there are more than just standard Phals out there. There is just so much variety in all of the species, and even some of the less common hybrids out there. And I hope you really enjoyed this one. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to click on the playlist to see more about Phalaenopsis, just head on over there, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!